Welcome all to the Eternal Compass. Thank you for being here, present with yourself, and bringing your beautiful energy into this space, this conversation, this invitation, and moments for expansion. I'd like to start with just a question. And the question to you and Heather and viewers, as this is a question that I have thought about over the last few years. What is one word or one judgment? If someone were to call you this word or pass this judgment on you, what would be like the worst word or the worst judgment? And maybe not the top of the top, but like when you think of a word like, oh, they think I'm blank. What is that word? And, for me, I'll just share for me because I've thought about it over the years. A typical, like, I don't know, fat, ugly bitch, like none of that hits me to my core as the word crazy. There's something about that word that I've had to work so much with, that if I were to share a vision or a dream or a really deep seated truth, they would think I'm crazy. So I'm not going to share it. And then I hide and harbor my truth within me. And so I've really had to honor that word and what that word means, especially in these days and times, and liberate it in a way. So, what about you, Heather?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had a lot of fear around being misunderstood. And that has played out a lot in my life where I actually have deeply been misunderstood. And I feel like it is very connected with that term crazy. Although I don't know that it's been something that I've really thought about until some of our recent conversations, because I've always been very empathic and very connected emotionally without really realizing it. And I know I've suppressed a lot of it up until recently because of, I think, that fear of being misunderstood and being called crazy. And what I've realized here over the last few years, definitely since Trip passed, I've had a lot of what I thought was real and what I thought was true, the reality that I was living in, literally crumbling in front of my eyes, and that prison in my mind, my thoughts and beliefs and the stories I told myself and the way that I acted from all of that crumble. There were many times in that first year after Trip died that I literally felt like I was losing my mind. And I think that's kind of the definition of going crazy, is losing one's mind, losing a grip on reality. But in that same sense, for me, what I found as everything crumbled was I was able to ground the new reality with higher order belief systems and different thought patterns and a more deeper embodied way of living and being. That kind of with all of that, I lost my fear of being misunderstood because that was in that old reality. And now I don't really have that fear anymore. And what I think I'm finding is I'm almost being called, like you said, to kind of liberate that fear of being called crazy and just reclaim it as the truth, because I do operate illogically to the 3D world, and I don't base my decisions, I don't make my decisions based on other people's reality. And
Mhm.
so I do think that to some people, maybe from my old life, if they were to meet me again or to know how I'm living my life, they might see me and perceive me as crazy. But I know I'm not. And that feels really empowering, and to not really care how I'm perceived by somebody else.
That's big work, my friend. That's really big work. I would say I'm still in that work of choosing to speak my truth, take action on my truth, regardless of what anyone would think of me. And the fear of being misunderstood connected to that word. Absolutely. I can feel that as well. And it's interesting, that word, because to me, so much when we are fully aligned in our truth, clear mind, clear heart, if someone is misunderstanding that, that's really hurtful, because when you don't question it at all within yourself and someone is not able to see it or hear it or feel it that way, that is really hard. So crazy. And then also, I think if you are acting also from clear heart and someone perceives it as you being hurtful, that
Mm.
would also be something that's hard for me. And I think when that does happen, because it has happened for me for sure, that person may not be in alignment with your path and where you're moving. It's definitely a moment to like stop and reflect, and instead of turning it on like you and what you did wrong and taking their voice and their opinions as the truth, it's a moment to really honor that, because of that clarity, that it is the truth and it is the way and it is so. But that's very challenging to do sometimes.
Yeah. It's recognizing and understanding that there are multiple realities, truths taking place at one time, and not letting somebody else's truth overshadow or diminish or demean me and my experience and what I'm feeling and what how I am perceiving and seeing things. And so letting those, like if you're in a two-person conversation that where you're not meeting, letting those realities exist together and recognizing that neither of them make one of you right or wrong. They both can exist. And that
Mhm.
doesn't make one person crazy and one person sane. And there's a lot there too for me with recognizing somebody else's needs, but also knowing that I still have the right to ask for what I would love. And that doesn't make them crazy or me crazy. It's again just like honoring the true realities
Yes.
and letting them coexist.
Right. Like non-polarity and neutrality about it.
Yeah, which, yes, I've been activated where the realities are not matching, but I could still see that both of us were standing and operating from just the truth of the present moment, and it doesn't negate. And so there has been a lot of learning for me in that, where even when we are misunderstood or somebody is maybe throwing that term crazy, isn't for me to take on and for me to like shift and morph and be like, oh, like I am crazy. No, you're just perceiving me like that because we're not matching.
Right. It's like they don't have the faculties and abilities to perceive it.
To perceive your truth as you are. Yeah. Because it's almost like, again, when we're operating in one reality with certain set of beliefs and certain thought patterns and from a certain frequency, we cannot see the truth.
Yeah.
We perceive the other as crazy, whereas maybe you're the crazy one.
Totally. Well, I mean, not taking the word crazy out of the conversation. I think of conversations I've had with my husband where I am speaking and sharing feelings and believe my experience and his feelings are literally the polarity, complete opposite of mine. And the most healing and helpful thing that I have found, not the most, but one thing that can be really helpful is going to understand, getting curious about his feelings and trying to see his truth and meeting him where he's at. And then I feel like then building that bridge, he's able to then cross that bridge and meet me where I'm at. Me initiating it has been really, really helpful for our marriage. Yeah, and the crazy if he doesn't get something that I share, I usually don't get that judgment from him. He might tell me, "You might not wanna share that with anybody else." Yeah.
Masculine protecting you.
Thank you for giving me advice about how to operate in the physical.
Yeah.
One day you'll see it though, or maybe not. Maybe you'll never see it.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot to be said about the masculine thinking that the feminine is crazy,
Oh my goodness,
right?
much there.
Uh, like, in a, like, playful, kind of joking, still loving you and supporting you, but recognizing you're a little different, and so we wanna protect you kind of way, but also where it's like the masculine has literally fucking thought the feminine's fucking crazy, and we know what they've done with that. And it's not fucking funny. And I absolutely feel like there is a thread in this, or a thread of this in every single feminine alive right now, even in the masculine, in their feminine energy. And I feel like that's a big reason why so many of us feminines have this, whatever you want to call it, like wound to work through or unwind, or you know energy to step into, of clearing, healing, remembering, reclaiming the voice, and stepping into that, no matter what kind of term is going to be thrown at us, because it's happened in the past, and it is in all of our DNA, right? And it's in the collective, and every single one of us that is moving through this reclamation of the voice, we're restoring the feminine to her rightful throne, the power.
Yeah, I feel like it's been one of the biggest forms of distortion and illusion and fuckery is to take the feminine's innate power of being the bridge and from the unseen to the physical, being the seer, being the oracle, the shaman. Shamans used to be females, and turning it around to something that is something to be feared of,
Yeah.
something to be fearful of. And that has played out for thousands of years. So that's part of the reason why that word I think is so triggering for me, because oftentimes my most transformative, expansive visions, dreams are for the structure, systems of illusion are crazy. They don't make any sense to that structure because it's way outside of the box. It's infinite, it's expansive. It's not something I've been taught. Sometimes the information, I can't look it up in a book. I can't, science, does it back it up? And
Mhm.
if we can't back it up by science, if we don't have some expert outside of us to confirm that it's real, then is it crazy? Is it some illusion? Absolutely not. And it's interesting because I started processing this with you yesterday. We were in conversation around where that fine line of where you get a feeling, a vision, a dream, an inner knowing, a gnosis, and for sure that it is the truth, your truth, you can feel it. But then maybe you start questioning it, or you become obsessive with it and you lose, you're like tethering to the human existence, to our ego, which we still need. Is that when quote unquote what we think of crazy, like not in touch, not in line with reality anymore? Is that where that starts to develop? Because there is a fine line between, you know, gnosis and vision and dream and what then could be psychosis. Psychosis where you can't come back, or like not a temporary psychosis. I don't know, where you lose touch with the human aspect of yourself.
Yeah.
I have my maternal grandmother was diagnosed with manic depression and schizophrenia in her early 20s, I believe. And so there's taking this word crazy goes to an even deeper level for me because I remember growing up as a child and there was this fear. We didn't talk about it often, but there was this fear of, well, it skips a generation. So my mom's okay. She's mentally sound. But I don't know how you're going to turn out. I don't know how your sister's going to turn out. And I remember feeling that around my teens and my early 20s. Am I going to get to the point where I am going to start hearing voices and living in some illusion? And it's so funny because I kind of chuckle because I am clairaudient and I do hear things beyond just this reality. But somehow I've been able to stay fully tethered to my humanity and to spirit, to God, goddess, universe. Like, I feel like that has kept me mentally sound in an integrated way where I can bring through that, the vision, the experience, the unseen information and not question it and still stay tethered to my humanity, to Jenna being, this form of existence. But man, it can be a delicate dance sometimes.
Yeah, and then we got into the conversation of, like, how are people determined as crazy and labeled as that, and in the, like, medical field as a mental diagnosis. As when you mentioned schizophrenia, I know you and I have had conversations where we recognize all the different versions of self that are operating.
Right.
And I even brought up that one movie, I forget what it's called, with John Cusack, and he is a schizophrenic, and he's got all these people, all these versions of himself are, like, acting the whole movie out in, like, a motel, and it just is so interesting because I know there's a difference. I can feel there's a difference. But what is that? And at the same time, it's like I want to take my power back from all of the terms that society has thrown at the feminine and that they've used to keep us down and to keep us to have us suppressing the truth of our power and our connection to spirit and having us be afraid of that so that we shy away and we keep ourselves in the box of whatever reality we grew up in. How dare we blow up that box, right? Like, how dare we
Yeah.
step out of that box and allow ourselves and the world we live in to be infinite. It's like I want to redefine it all. And that's where I feel like I want to say I am crazy in the 3D world. Like I am a fool. I don't make sound choices. Like, and fuck that. But there's a
Yep.
difference between that and somebody who cannot operate in the 3D. And I think you bring up a really great point of somehow still being connected to the Heather that's here, this physical personality, ego version of self.
The fracturing's interesting, and fracturing of personality, fracturing of self versus witnessing, attuning, and aligning a multidimensional self.
Mm,
Again, kind of a fine line. Like, it's hard to look at those in polarized terms because there's a lot of overlap. I think deep trauma can leave people so fractured where really horrible abuse, you fracture into these different aspects of yourself to keep your other aspect of yourself that's experiencing it safe.
mhm,
Sometimes people lose memory, lose time during those horrible forms of abuse. And then those aspects of self almost gain this like form of consciousness and of it in and of itself, like multiple personality disorder, which I also think is so freaking fascinating. And so, yeah, I think trauma has a lot to do with it. I think back to I did not know my grandmother well. I actually just met her in person once, but just thinking about that time that she grew up and what she experienced and being way more oppressed in the system, way more oppressed as a female, as a woman in the system, where you are conditioned to question everything that is woman, where you are conditioned that that woman is less than man. Of course you would go to a man for guidance. Of course these experts in white coats know what's best for me. And so maybe I am crazy and I question, you know, was my grandmother a seer? Was my grandmother a visionary and psychic, and somehow she believed that she wasn't. And because of that belief, she then became that label. I don't know. It's interesting because they say there's a genetic component to schizophrenia and bipolar and all different types of mental illness, that there's a genetic component. But is it just the deep seated belief? That belief plants something in our genes. I am this. And then we carry that on. Now you are this. And so somebody then in that genetic line has to turn to that coding and that belief and say, no, I'm not that anymore.
Yeah.
No, that's pretty much epigenetics, turning towards it, witnessing it, and saying, fuck that. No, I'm not that. But I don't want to discredit that there are very serious and significant mental needs out there as well. I just think, again, putting it in a box and a label to help us understand and then putting them on some kind of high dosage of some kind of medication to calm the visions or like doesn't help them at all. And oh my gosh, my poor grandmother and that experience of what she went through of living a life with the belief that I am crazy. There's something wrong with me.
Or maybe she didn't, but other people thought she did, right? Because that's something else we talked about yesterday. Like, I want to speak to the epigenetic piece. And so, spiritually, you could go to, I think I've talked about this book before on the podcast. The gene key, there's 64 of them, and we all have them, and they're in our DNA. They are our DNA. They are the codes of our DNA. And I think one of the shadows is psychosis, but it is the psychosis that all of us are in the 3D because we are disconnected from the truth of ourselves. And so anyway, like if anybody's kind of curious about some of this conversation, you could turn kind of to the spiritual piece and how that's in our DNA of some of these keys or codes. But I also feel like they are what happens with epigenetics, and this is just how I've seen it, how it's been shown to me, is there are these unfelt experiences that get trapped in our DNA. And that is what the unfelt experience, the emotion that's trapped in our DNA because it's not been witnessed and expressed and released, is epigenetically passed down. And so it's the fear, it's the shame, it's the judgment, it's all of those unfelt emotions about the visions, about the trauma, everything that could, yes, a flip of a switch, like a light switch, be flicked on, and then it expresses itself in crazy.
Yes. Like operating on such an unconscious level.
Yes, but everything epigenetically, if it's a switch that can be turned on, is a switch that can be turned off or can be something that is not ever expressed. And yes, sometimes it is the knowledge that that exists that flips the switch, because then the fear kicks in and has us resisting and not wanting to repeat that or operate in that. But sometimes it is the knowledge that allows us to turn and witness it and say no more. It's the same thing like with my thyroid. I mean, oh, that's genetic. Hashimoto's hypothyroidism is genetic. Of course it fucking is, because every single feminine in my family up and down the fractal has had their voice suppressed. So the second I said, no, I refuse to believe that that's the reason that I have a thyroid problem, I've turned it off. And so of course we're misunderstood because our voice has been distorted. The frequency that's coming through it has been distorted by the fear, by all of these negative words and all their definitions. And so is it really that I mean, yeah, like who said your grandma was crazy?
Yeah, when did that now I'm just so curious. It's interesting that I think as a young girl and then even adult is something that I described it to you yesterday as I felt like I described it as a padded room, no pun intended.
Or yeah.
Said padded room as far as like this barrier of protection where my mother created that for me so that I wouldn't experience it, and what she experienced wouldn't be passed down to me, as far as seeing her mother going in and out of the mental hospital and her mental breakdowns, and she didn't want to see that, and she worked really hard at ensuring that. And now I'm in this space of just deep curiosity where I'm going to sit down with my mother and just ask her as many questions as I can. I'd love to go back to connecting with my grandmother when she was alive, quantum traveling and going back to that time and witnessing her and asking her questions directly. And I'm just really fascinated and curious about this. And it makes me think of, I don't know when this time is. I want to say the 20s. We could always look this up. But there was that massive hysteria for women where, like, that definition of hysteria was first coined, and it was through women, that women were coming and they were hysterical with all of the demands of what it meant to be a woman and living in a cyclical reality, and nobody recognized hormonally what women were going through, and that we're like dying and birthing ourselves every month with our menstruation, and that's not recognized. And yeah, and taking care of 5 kids and expecting to do all of the shit. Yeah, maybe it was a little bit later. I'm sure it was I'm thinking 50s when I described that, but I think it was before that. I know the rise of Valium, like Mother's Little Helper, was came around in the fizz, and that was very common, almost like how we wake up and we take our caffeine. It was very common for women to use their Valium just to ease their nerves so they wouldn't become hysterical. All the things we did to suppress the feminine, like, it really enrages me.
What I just came through is hysterics, the hysterical. It's very emotional. We are, as women, very emotional. We have infinite ability to hold everything. The divine feminine is the infinite all of everything, where all emotions arise. And there have been so many times, definitely within the last couple of years, where I have just been overcome with emotion. Sometimes it's rage. Sometimes it's just deep sadness and grief, where I just cry and cry. And if somebody was sitting here with me, they'd be like, where is this coming from? Why are you like this? And I could not give you a reason. The rage, there have been times where I feel the deep rage of the fucking earth, and it moves through me so powerfully. And I just rage that, yes, if somebody was witnessing me in this, that I could be deemed hysterical.
Yes, especially in that day and age. It makes me
And so that's what I'm saying is like, was that this, where again, so many of us are deeply connected, but if we're not conscious and aware of it, and even if we're living in a time where people misunderstand it because they're not at a level of being able to witness us like we just talked about, we're going to be labeled something to make them feel better about the seeming insanity that they're being witness to.
Oh, yes, yes. And so much of the deep, 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 powerful rage, grief, and sadness is not ours. It's the lineage of the
Yeah.
feminine line, and woman, the energy of the collective of having a womb in this existence. And I almost think when that rise of hysteria, when the husband's calling the doctor, when a man is calling another man and saying, my wife isn't right. She's not making me dinner this week and, having sex with me every night like she normally does. What's wrong? Can you help her? I feel like that a time where the rise of the divine feminine, the rise of like potentially healing that came through like a wave through women, and women were trying to communicate it and do something with it, but they didn't live in the existence that we do. So it was suppressed. It was squashed back down. And then we were labeled as hysteric and crazy.
I feel I've got goosebumps just feeling into that because we know the wave has been coming, right? And this rise has been coming. But it's almost where it just wasn't time. The collective couldn't hold it. There wasn't enough people that could see it for the truth of what it was. So it was able to be squashed and almost like pushed under the rug and labeled something else.
Yeah, it also could have given rise to, again, I would have to look on the actual like timelines of things on a linear level, but actually the feminist movement that could have given rise to the feminist movement of the 50s and 60s and 70s and beyond, where so much was changed for women, and what women were now. It was the news, I believe, late teens or 20s, where 1921, where women were able to vote. Only white women, though. So, yeah, it would be interesting to like, how fascinating would that be, looking at those waves of feminist movements with rise in diagnoses of mental illness for women? I bet you could see correlation there.
Yeah, we're definitely in a time where more and more of women are speaking up and out about what they're experiencing, and we are in a really I mean, we're in a really crazy time, right? But also a divinely right time to be able to speak on things and not be at risk for being called crazy.
What a privilege.
And I've definitely felt that in my body, that fear of, again, of being misunderstood, of being called crazy earlier on in kind of my more conscious journey, where it's like every time you step up and out and speak something. It's where I said in one of the podcasts, like my jaw would hurt really bad because I was literally protecting myself, trying to keep myself from speaking something that I could then be called crazy or I would get lashed out at because I'm being misunderstood. And that fear in our bodies is real. So many of us have that. And I really do think one of the biggest things that for me has been the most healing is recognizing that that was just it was my body's way of telling me that I was meeting my edge.
Yeah.
And I had the choice of how I stepped beyond that edge. If it was speaking something to my husband that scared the shit out of me, or saying something to a family member, or maybe it was putting something on social media that scared the crap out of me. I got to choose how I would step beyond that edge and build trust within myself that I'm safe to do this. And I recognize that not everybody can do that, but I just offer that if you are willing to step beyond the edge and are able to, it's essentially a way of like wiping the fear, clearing the fear from the field.
Yeah, the fear is also illusion of what could be. There's so much fear of speaking, sharing.
Well, it's because it's what happened in the past, and that's the
That's
epigenetic, unfelt experience that it's maybe not even ours. Like,
well, it is.
genetic is lifetimes and, like, up and down the fractal, right? Yeah,
It
it's
isn't. Part of it I know is me, but I think that deep why the fear is so potent is because the speaking up before would equal potential death,
Yeah.
or my family would be taken away. I literally, a woman could just not be a mother anymore, like separated from her family for the rest of her life. Death, horrible forms uh,
Mutilation.
of mutilation and abuse. So we feel all of that. And so that fear that we feel now is in a way an illusion, because that, again, I'll only speak for myself. I have the privilege of knowing that that's not going to happen to me in those ways anymore. It's the greatest privilege I have as a woman at this time. And there's many, many, many thousands upon thousands of women in this reality right now that don't have that don't have that privilege, that it's not safe to speak up. It's not safe to truly be seen as a divine feminine in her feminine form and power and sharing her big feelings and her visions. And so that's why it's even more important for the women that do have that privilege to share, to speak, because you're not only freeing yourself, you're freeing your lineage of your ancestors, you're freeing women currently that don't have that privilege and that opportunity.
Yes, yes, yes. It helps clear the not only your field, like your energetic field of the fear, but it clears the collective. It clears the collective. As you were just talking, I was reminded the kids and I watched Moana 2 the other day. Have you
Oh,
seen that?
this time was in theater, so it's been a
Mm.
while.
I resonate so deeply with this movie, and every time we watch it, I feel like there's a part of me. I feel like some of the songs that come through me are very indigenous, and I really don't have any connection in this life to anything indigenous, but the songs that come through me, I don't know the words that I'm singing. Just it comes, I think, from, we'll call it epigenetic, the good epigenetics. But there's this part, I guess it's kind of at the beginning, where Moana has this vision. She gets like struck by lightning and she has the vision of her ancestors and she's shown that she needs to find this island. And what I noticed this time in watching it was just how freely she shared this vision and how freely her community honored her and honored the journey that she was being asked to go on for them.
Right. They're not like, "That's crazy. What? You're
Right.
this journey just because you," it was so honored and revered because she was the shaman, the seer, the leader, the feminine leader of the tribe. So of course they would
She was
honor
just
her.
Yeah, and she was just being dubbed the Tao Tai, the Wayfinder. And that's what the feminine is. Like there is no like path. We're just given vision and we fucking follow it.
True.
And I was just like, I love that. I love that her tribe, her people, the men and the women were just so excited for her to do this and not once called her crazy and I think she had a similar song I recognized as Elsa in Frozen 2. They're like, I'm happy here. I'm happy in my box. Not my box. Away from my box. I don't want to go beyond my box. And I'm that, we were just talking about that. It's like it's just so cozy here. Don't call me beyond. Don't make me go beyond. But it is the call is to constantly step outside the box, go beyond your edge. And, I don't know. It just that was really, I think, important for me to see and witness that part in that way because I never have before. It's not like I watch that movie every day, but that part hasn't stood out to me like it just did,
Right.
where the community supports that vision.
Yeah. That is one of my greatest callings and passions right now, is to create community for women to be able to be in space and
Mm.
share things and have a community that will support her in that. It really, I feel like it needs to first be created. amongst women. And also within us, we've talked about this too with our allowing our inner masculine to witness us and not be scared of the visions and just witness it within us, I think can then help a lot with the healing of the masculine and the physical. I know that has been so mirrored, like the more work I do on my inner masculine, the more work that I see that my masculine, my husband, is able to then just witness me without judgment.
Yes, yes, yes. There's a lot of work with the inner masculine that distorted judgment, or kind of how I've been shown it from the distorted masculine energy that like wants to build up walls and like block out the feminine, block out the visions, like no, I don't want that guidance. Or from the kind of wounded masculine that turns away and runs from it, like no, I don't want to see that. I'm good without it. I'm good. I can't see that. I don't want it. And so every time like that energy shows up within me, witnessing it and choosing different has been huge in how I show up for myself. And then in relationships and what I'm able to offer and provide for friends, for family, for others, because I do it within myself and for myself first. So, when I don't call myself crazy and judge myself, then I don't do that with others. And
I wish I was just gonna say, I wish our English vocabulary index is so limited. Just wish there were other words to describe the crazy because it's still
Mm.
interesting. I'm getting a little froggy. Are we noticing this? When someone shares something with me, it's like, you're going to think this is crazy. I had this crazy experience the other day. We use it so generally. And I've started trying to use the word aligned. I had this really aligned experience where like something happens and it's unexplained and you don't know, but it feels so magical. But I wish there were other words. Ineffable is another great word where like you can't really describe it. You can't, but I I am hungry for other words that describe what we want to try to describe, but we don't know how to describe it, so we just keep landing on crazy.
Yeah. Yes. I feel like it's one thing to redefine words and kind of reclaim them as something that means something to you. I think you and I are both very conscious in the words that we use and recognizing the energy behind words. And that crazy term obviously comes with a lot of baggage because it is used in such a wide variety of ways, but it does carry that energy of like unhinged.
And also in a way, what just came through, if you're witnessing something and you're like, "Crazy. Whoa, that's crazy." You're almost through spoken word. Think about what a word holds. Like the energetic potency of a word. When we say that, we're almost squashing it and saying that's not real. What I'm what I'm witnessing isn't real. And you're kind of like, boop, you're stepping back into the box. Like you're creating a line, like drawing a line so you're not able to fully potentially witness what's in front of you and say, this is so.
Mm.
Why? This is here for me now. I receive, I witness. If we shifted our language just a bit, what would that do for us? Because words have immense power. And maybe that's why we're so coded to say crazy all the time.
What's interesting is when you said that, that's so crazy. Instantly, I heard mind blowing. Your reality is shattered. And so instead of you were getting at how that would squash to me when you say that, to me it was like reality's exploded. I can see how reality can be different because that's fucking crazy. And that didn't exist in my reality before. And so the old reality has been blown to smithereens.
Mind blowing. Yeah, absolutely.
But it's all a matter of It's perception. And so I can see how even in that instance, that word can be both. It has the potential of doing both. And so it is almost about being more conscious in the words that we're using, and maybe more than redefining, we just let some die. Just like we have to let things go and we let realities go. Maybe our new realities don't even carry the term crazy. They don't carry some of these words that have been coded with such deep pain. We just let them go.
Yeah, something to think about.
Yeah. Yeah. I invite everybody who is listening to contemplate and maybe answer the question that Jenna asked of all of us at the beginning. What is the term that if somebody called you that, it would be heartbreaking, devastating, difficult to move through? Because maybe it's not crazy for you, but maybe if you resonate with what Jenna and I have talked about here, what other word can you use or will you start to use to describe some of the things that maybe you've experienced? Feel like one of the biggest things that Jenna and I want to do with this podcast, and what I would like to invite everybody here listening today, is just to move from a really empowered place in your life, however your eternal compass guides you.